Hi, this is Liv Morgan, and you are listening to No One Knows, a deep dive podcast into the mysterious death of Joann Matouk Romain.
Okay, my name is Paul Zyburski. I had recently written and self-published a book called From Pepperdine to Prison, basically because I had just retired from a 30-year-old law practice where I was a criminal defense lawyer in predominantly Macomb County. I did some Wayne County too, but predominantly Macomb County. And as you know, or because you're on a podcast, Michigan is in fact leads the nation every year for like the last 15 years in political corruption cases. I mean, and predominantly from Macomb and Wayne counties, Macomb County especially. And I was right in the eye of that storm, And because I worked my way into the inner circles, predominantly with judges and prosecutors and some police agencies, I saw some very deep-rooted corruption.
How did you go from this idea of you want to give back to the community? You grew up in a very middle to low class, very basic household. You were the victim of, police brutality. You decided to be a lawyer. How did you kind of get involved with, you know, having these type of cases thrown out in court? Like, how did this?
Well, at first, it was a no one was getting hurt type thing. And I had a cooperating judge who was my best friend. And he told me, you don't have to ask. You have whatever you want in my court. I'll have my clerks go along with you. You can have anything you want. That meant return of bonds, they go to me. Fines and costs go to me. Cases dismissed at whatever I choose, they go to me. They put it under advisement, they defer it, and they dismiss it.
So it's kind of like this not talked about thing, right? Like you guys, you start hanging out. You said you had this party mentality. You had money coming in. You were being very successful. And then all of a sudden you guys start hanging out. Some drugs get involved, partying.
Well, then my main judge, that he got in trouble for embezzlement, And I told him, I says, man, and then I took, like an idiot, I took him into my office. I kind of knew what he was doing was wrong. This guy didn't drink, gamble, smoke, womanize, none of it. He was almost a Catholic priest. He was 3 weeks shy of being ordained, but he wanted a family instead. So he was a great influence on me, but he had a problem with greed. It was his only problem. Well, it was a major problem. So when I took him in my office, I started overhearing some conversations and shit, and I said, hey, Judge, you already lost the job over this. You lost one job. I said, and every time a judge gets pinched, every single time, they give information, they cut a deal, especially with the feds, and they're allowed to keep the law license in practice. So they just step down. You don't hear about them anymore. So, that's one of the reasons that they get off so easy.
Well, because they don't want the bad publicity. People always wonder how corruption happens, right? And it's like,
oh my God, you cannot possibly have such corruption unless you have cooperation from the courts.
Exactly.
And mainly the prosecutor. We've only had 2 prosecutors in the last 50 years in Macomb County. They were both federally indicted. And Eric Smith just got out of prison, I understand. I personally liked the guy because he gave me what I wanted. So, again, nobody was getting hurt at first. So I say about my first half of my career, 15 years, it was just gravy, man. It was great. I'll make sure all the right people get paid, make sure the cop gets a good certificate, make sure whatever, court clerks, make sure take care of the staff, anybody, because it was coming easy. And so,
and these were petty crimes. This wasn't crimes of murder, abuse.
No, I did a few capital cases. I did a murder trial once, and with the co-counsel, and I found out the guy through interviews that he was a serial killer. I went and told the police. I said, just listen, every city this guy's lived in, there's bodies turning up. And they did. They pinned another one or a couple on him after that. But I flipped a coin. I said, well, if this guy gets off, we can flip a coin to see who gets to kill him. And I caught the coin. I said, no, I'll kill him. I'll do it myself. So I didn't want to do murder trials no more, not after that one. But most of it were right. Most of it were predominantly like drunk drivings, domestic assaults, husband and wife arguing, somebody had too many drinks, just stuff like that, misdemeanor stuff. And not violent. I wouldn't do it for violent crimes, but in case somebody was wrongfully charged, it might border on something like that. But very few. I did some felony dismissals too. But I get to pick and choose those. You know what I mean? On the court assigned day, sometimes I would dismiss the whole fucking docket, man. There would be like 40 cases on there, and one of these judge lawyers turned me in. They're sitting in the court. They found out what was going on, and they kicked me off the assignment list because I did too good of a job, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what?
But see, at first it was like that. Now, when these greedier guys come out, especially after Judge Cannon was gone, because he was always protecting me. I was always getting in trouble, and he would always run in my aid, and that was never talked about. He would just always do it, always, always, always. He was just great to me. That's why I want to be good to him in return. Now, when these other guys start coming out, and they never come alone either. They always got a partner with them, or this guy, or that guy, or this rep, and then they meet with you. Right away when you walk into a judge's office, and he looks at you, and he says, "Hey, show me the love." What's up? What do you mean, Judge? Well, it's my wife's birthday. I got to take her to dinner. Okay, how much money you got on you? Go in your pocket. I got $200. And then that's not good enough. Well, they'll give you some time. I'll hold your case. Go to the ATM, get another 500. And you're thinking to yourself, what the fuck? My case isn't even in his court. It's in the court next door. I didn't even know I was fucking here. You know what I mean? And he starts snagging the cases and putting it in his court, okay? And then start happening in another court, where the guy comes up and says, drop the envelope where I can see it. That just means give me the money. You know what I mean? They see you're making money in their court, and they want a piece. Now, if this was just one or two people, I wouldn't even be talking about it. You know what I mean? And just tell you who the bad guy is. But I don't want to say who all of them are, because some of them, their wives don't know, or their staff doesn't know, or one court, the other judges don't even know. You know what I mean? That's just a tight inner circle. But they did it freely in front of me because I knew I wouldn't talk, and I wouldn't. I mean, I don't have nothing to prove there. I faced on my second indictment, under the federal taxes they use, it's called bleed them until you plead them. On my second indictment, I faced 105 years and a $10 million fine. That's 5 life sentences plus 5 years.
Has anyone ever been charged like that?
The overcharge? Yeah, the feds do it all the time.
No, but I'm saying
they completely manufactured a charge that had no basis in reality. They had me on paper saying I took 2 kilos based off a phone tap. I said to the guy, "You got one?" He says, "Yeah, 1K." That's a text. "Yeah, 1K." I said, 2 sounds better. I'm getting primed to go to Colombia because I had a condo out in Medellin, Colombia. So they said that was code talk. 2 meaning kilos, that I took 2 kilos of cocaine to Colombia. I mean, come on, man. It's $10 a gram in Colombia.
So they got
anybody
you.
Just transported a kilo from Detroit to Colombia. So anyway, it was so far-fetched. So I just couldn't understand it. Now, I knew about the state run, how they can trump up charges. You heard of the Innocence Project before and things like that. Police agencies are always being exposed. You know what I mean? And when it runs so deep like that, and this is where I'm getting at, and I touch on all this kind of corruption, just kind of tied it all in together based on my own experiences. You know what I mean? And you were talking about this Matouk case. I mean, that's just rot with corruption, and that's the same kind of corruption I'm talking about in this book. You could just, change the face, and the story's still the same. You know what I mean?
Very true. Yep.
That's why you have such an uphill battle, and people. 8 out of 10 people that you go talk to and tell somebody about this story about Matouk, they're just going to turn their head and just say, she's just frustrated, because, no, that couldn't happen. But they don't go to court. See, they don't understand the underbelly, the soft white underbelly of the political system. I mean, how do you even account for it? Because Macomb County, Michigan only has 800,000 residents. LA County's got 10 million. Cook County, Chicago has 5 million. And they don't have the amount of indictments we have. Why is that?
And it's funny because we have these amount of indictments, but we still have this extreme level of corruption within.
Okay, all these guys in this recent political indictment that they had. Every one of them keeps their pensions. Even Eric Smith kept his pension. So you're still paying for them after they steal. They're robbing the county blind, robbing the people blind. The taxpayers are paying their money, and it's never enough. Look at the lifestyles they all lead. They all got 3,000 square foot houses and a 40-foot boat. Not all of them. I'm not saying every judge. I'm talking about the corrupt ones. They'll have a 40-foot boat.
That's something we talk about a lot in the podcast is if you follow the money, you'll see.
Yes, okay, let me ask you this one, Liv. Well, this is a good one. This is a good analogy here. Because every time you turn on a show, say it's Chicago PD, and there's a judge involved, they go up there. He's always living in like a mini mansion.
Yep.
Anytime, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the guy's a judge. He lives in a fucking mansion in Bel-Air. You know, now, where do these guys get this money on a government salary?
And
Make
nobody
$100,000 a
questions
year.
it. It's crazy.
Well, there's always smart investments. That's what they tell you. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. If anything, they get more in perks than they get in salary.
Agreed.
When I say perks, I'm not just talking about lunch or dinner. I'm talking about 5-star restaurants. They're eating at 3 to 5 days a week. I'm talking about lavish vacations at condos that are $3,000 to $5,000 a night. Because I know I stayed there. I went there for 15 years in a row.
Yeah, I want to talk about that and really break this down. So, for our listeners, I want to give them the real understanding, right? So, you've created this relationship at the time. You know, what year are we saying these are happening in?
Oh, that was one of the beginning of my career. I started, I passed the bar in '88, and so right around '90, you know, I immediately got into it. Shit, and I didn't start out the right way. I was $160,000 in debt, and I think I was suspended my first year in law practice, second year or something, for not following the rules of the state bar or some bullshit. So that kind of woke me up, and then I just got busy. And once the money started rolling in, and it was becoming really easy money, it becomes like a drug, like anything else. And I always said, I'm not in it for the money. And I remember one of my clients pulled up, and he says, "Man, you're never going to get the big fees. I mean, we drive a nicer car than you do." And I said, "I don't care about a car. It's, you know, like, it gets me to where I want to go." "No, man, you got to have a better car, man. And you get bigger fees, man. Even street people don't think like you do." So I went out and bought me a Jaguar cash, you know. And then from there, I started getting bigger fees. I started getting tailor-made suits and all that bullshit. I just figured this was all a cost of doing business.
The life comes with
on the, fact
the
that it
lifestyle.
came so damn easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the lifestyle, but nobody was getting hurt. If anything, I was helping a lot of people out, you know. I just was, and I would get criticized all the time for not charging to market or bear on cases, because most of the people that are in trouble, they're in trouble for a reason. They don't have the financial means to get a good lawyer.
Yep.
So I kind of got off on that. To tell you the truth, I just did. I can't really explain it, but when the money started rolling in, I could always justify it that, hey, shit, I'm getting 50 or 100 G's on this, and, you know, why do I have to charge this other guy who's a lady who needs representation, you know? She never caught a break. She got 3 screaming kids in a car. They come in the lobby, you know, and you could tell the women just wore out, you know what I mean? She's offering to pay me for tip money from the Coney Island, you know. I couldn't accept that kind of shit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to get an award for it, and I don't really want one, but it made me feel
You
good.
were doing what was right at the beginning, and that's the reason why you did all of this. You became a lawyer.
I did cross some. Let's say this: I don't think I did that much illegal stuff, but it would be classified as unethical.
It is, and I
the
think,
state bar,
yeah, and I think when we start looking into the unethical side, when it comes to a lot of these judges, we then start talking about, you know, these type of judges where, for instance, lines start to get blurred, right? So
I'm not blurred. Listen, blurred, beyond blurred. I'm talking about jumped over. You know, I'm talking about bribery, extortion, and that's the real big one. How in the hell can a judge be extorting money from you? Now, I've had this happen 2 times directly. One guy's still on the bench right now, and he's so wide open over there. Everybody knows who he is. I don't even know how he lives with himself, and you know.
Are we talking about Coretti?
In other ways. Well, Coretti's pretty bad too, but he's not an outright extortionist. Like he does it in different ways. Okay, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll sell to the highest bidder. Put it that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
if
have
you do it,
yeah,
if he'll do it over a 1 week vacation, imagine what he'll do for real money with the big law firms
right?
because they got the real money. You
Yeah,
know,
and you're
you know.
familiar with so Coretti
Coretti,
is
I took Coretti to Mexico for 15 years, man, and the bills were escalating every year, going up and up. But I got whatever I wanted in this court, whatever.
wow.
It's and the feds went through my records. They know. I mean,
So why did the feds
they just
when they brought these charges on you, right? Why did they not look into Macomb County? Why did they not look into these
well,
judges that you
this was their big prize. I was their big prize at the time. You got to remember that everything with the feds is done in complete secrecy. Nothing is recorded. So they transcribe it on what's called a 302 form, and it's just based on the agent's memory. They can do that a month later. So nothing is recorded. They cut deals all the time. Well, they must know something. I didn't say nothing, and I don't have nothing to prove. I would never turn nobody in. I was never going to do that. Yeah, these judges, and there were many. We were having meetings at Mr. Paul's Chop House. They were coming up to my condo up here in Marysville, Gray probably the most, and just begging for salvation. They all kept thinking because they heard that somebody did an attorney proffer agreement, but it wasn't me. You could proffer the evidence to your attorney. And and I can tell you shit like my first attorney was working with the government. And then I got a second attorney. He was working with the government, and I have absolute proof of it. However, if I show you that proof, they probably hit me with obstruction of justice or witness tampering. So fuck it, I'll burn it. You know what I mean? That's why I
yeah.
don't get into that area. Okay, but what I'm saying is the corruption level was so deep. But when I was getting what I wanted there, man, and it's just, let's say you had a second drunk driving. Say you had 3. That's in Michigan. That's a felony, 3 in a lifetime, and there's all the licensing sanctions and all that. Well, you come to a guy like me, if you have enough money, I just get thrown out of court on a technicality. All right. So that's a good example of it because I made a ton of money off drunk driving because the upper courts don't want to hear them. Then they don't fine you in the circuit court. And the district courts run on those fines and costs. They don't necessarily fine people like you can't believe. Always working class people,
Yeah, keep the
the higher class
poor
people, they're
poor,
going to
keep
pity
the
you out of it
rich
anyway.
rich. Yep.
Yes. And then the other ones, the indigent ones, they don't have money, but they usually come up for it when they put them in jail. And they'll throw those guys in jail. They keep the jail at full capacity at all times. There's always room for one more. That's what they have a saying in there. After I started seeing the corruption, like here I'm in Mexico with the chief judge, the head of the Teamsters, and I'm not going to say nothing bad about him because I liked him. And he was the president of the Teamsters, the guy who has Jimmy Hoffa's job, and the international treasurer from Malibu, all these big shots, And so I was going on vacations with them and socializing. These parties I had at my house in the last 10 years, man, that's the funny part. There was no cocaine fuel parties in the last 10 years at my house. That was back in like 90s and 2000, back in the 80s, 90s, shit like that. We had some blown out parties. That was so long ago, man. I mean, they put money in a drug case, but it was nothing. When I asked, I pretended like I was going to cooperate at one point because I wanted to know exactly what they wanted. So I pretended, and the lawyer comes over, sets up and everything. And she got a list of questions. She didn't even ask me one question. I asked her to ask me all the questions first, and then I'll think about it and I'll start writing them down. For like 1 hour, spent the first half hour talking about all kinds of mob shit, about the family, how it works, this, that, blah, 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 blah. Then she went right to Eric Smith. That was her first one, all about Eric Smith. How do I get stuff done, or how am I getting so many cases thrown out, blah, 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 blah. I said the majority of my cases were thrown out directly with a judge. I didn't need Eric Smith, but I needed him on some bigger ones. Okay, then they went to the judges. In acts of desperation, when they never thought for a minute that I would not cooperate. They always thought I would flip. But after 2.5 years of being on this bond, and incidentally, they had these federal tactics, like I said, called bleed them till you plead them. So even though these charges are completely manufactured, completely made up, no basis in reality, you're going to need about $300,000 to $500,000 to go to trial with a good lawyer, okay? So you can be a blurb in a fucking paper. And so they were making me test. It sounds trivial, but they're making me alcohol drug test downtown Detroit, and I live by Port Huron, and the court is 3 minutes from my house. That's where my court case was in the Eastern District of Michigan. Yet they're making me go down there 3 times a week. And every time you go down there, it's an all-day affair. And most of the times, my number, I call in every day. And it sounds chicken shit, but this went on for 2.5 years. When I went to complain, I said, this is just complete government harassment. Every time I take my car out, they're going to get pulled over. I got to go downtown 3 times a week, and it says 3 times a month on the order. And the judge said, well, I can't believe our systems aren't sophisticated enough to test you here in Port Huron. And that's all that was ever said. And I went right back there. And I never forget, it was Martin Luther King Day. And they called me the day after, and they said, you missed your appointment yesterday. We're going to have the federal marshals come and pick you up within an hour if you don't get down here within an hour. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't have no test yesterday. I said, don't you celebrate Martin Luther King Day? The court was closed. And the guy hung the phone up on me. That's your agent that is assigned to you. They have the complete power to fuck with you any time of the day, 24/7.
See, and that's the part that's so crazy to me is like we have instances like this where they make your life a living hell. And
oh yes, no, that's not. At the minute you go from person of interest, which I was a person of interest for over 25 years, I never paid that much attention to it. And you know, the FBI takes pictures, they do whatever. I didn't really care about being seen with gangsters because hell, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. What the fuck did I care? You know, nobody tells me who to eat with and all that shit. And so, yeah, this testing is. You know, I did 6.5 years of alcohol and drug testing with no violations. Now, I don't know. I practiced for 30 years. If someone's drinking or doing drugs, you can never make 6 months. I did 6.5 years of totally unnecessary testing for harassment. You know, that was one of the harassment tools.
Do you feel like the feds...
No. So I went to prison. Now they send me to prison because I didn't flip. On my third indictment, I carried no mandatory time. My guidelines are 0 to 12 months. They say I was hosting house parties where I let people do cocaine or marijuana or cocaine, you know, at my house party. Therefore, I created the possibility that they might want more. That's what my plea was. I've never heard of it because it doesn't exist. But then there's the element of profit. So I bring this up to the judge. Judge, how do you accept the plea when you don't fulfill the elements? There's no allegation of profit. And he said, no, I disagree. It's what economists refer to as psychic rent. You must have profited in your own mind. And I said, well, can I go to McDonald's and buy a Big Mac of fries and a fucking Coke and pay for it with the profit in my mind, man? You know?
And you have to think, you're like very well versed in law. So
yeah,
you're not just any Joe Schmo off the side of the road that's getting, charged.
But these are the feds. The feds take down whoever they target. Their conviction rate is over 90%. Whenever you become a target, you either flip to give information, which in my case, the statistics are 99.999% of the time if you're a lawyer over 50 in criminal law, because you have access to so much criminal information, which I did. It's no secret. I mean, I have a wealth of information, but most of the things they want dirty cops. That very few. You know, I'm no big advocate for police. You know, I'm a victim of police brutality, but the cops were predominantly not like that. They just no, especially the local agencies.
And so
but
you
the
think the reason? Sorry.
Pardon me.
You think the reason you became a red flag for the feds was because of your connections and friendships with sitting judges, with known mob individuals, and because you were unwilling to flip, the feds took that as an opportunity to say, okay, we're going to make a lesson out of this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what they did. They even went to some other guys that I know that they interviewed. You know, look, we sent this fucking big shot lawyer to prison. Imagine what we'll do to you. And then they just flip on the spot.
What was your reason for not flipping?
You know, I get asked that all the time, man. It used to be called a certain code that you grew up with honor, loyalty, and respect. And, you know, just never snitch nobody out, in other words, in layman's terms. Never snitch nobody out, you know. And I was really into that attorney-client privilege because most of the information I received is privileged. And I would never turn on somebody with privileged information. That's why I had a good rep with my clients. Never would I turn on them, even to their husbands or wives or nobody, you know. And it's just ingrained in me. And now, I didn't think, and I don't even have prison numbers. To go to a federal prison, you got to have prison numbers. You know, I had a number. My score was a 3, but if you self-surrender on time, you have a 0. That means you don't even have prison numbers. Okay, because at first level you go to a camp. They didn't even send me to a camp. They sent me directly to a prison, and I don't even have prison numbers.
And how
So
long did you spend in prison?
the judge wouldn't even give me a year and a day, in which case you get off 3 months of good time or a halfway house. However, now let's get the story case. I'm just going to go from bad to worse real quick. I got one day they called me up there. It was during COVID, and they told me, do I have a ride home when I leave? I said, well, I don't leave for like 5 months or 6 months. And they said, no, you're leaving tomorrow at 8 o'clock. You're going to home arrest. That's what my paper said. When I got to the halfway house, these motherfuckers had me flagged when I got there, and they said, well, we have to quarantine you. I said, I just got out of quarantine. I'm supposed to go to home arrest. And they said, well, no, your paperwork didn't come through. And I said, well, I have a copy of the papers. And I showed them. They said, nope, it's got to come from the BOP, Bureau of Prisons. And they cleared out a little broom closet for me, and it had some security screens, because you can have a TV in a halfway house, but not in my room. It was a little broom closet with a bed and security screens, so I couldn't use the phone or the TV, and I was locked down 23 hours a day. That just put me in solitaire. And I did 5 months of that shit.
Oh,
That's
my
mental
God.
torture, you know. That's complete mental torture.
Of course.
And,
So this is, and you have to think, this is like, because you wouldn't flip on, but now knowing, okay, so let's backtrack for a second. So you get indicted on these false charges, false allegations, all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have now these sitting judges within Macomb County coming to visit you because they're scared shitless that you're going to flip.
Yeah. Oh, that was all the time. I was on bond for 2.5 years.
And they were coming how many days a week?
Yeah. Oh, they're contacting me at least once a week. But as far as because when I moved up to Marysville, then I'm, a couple hours away. So they're still coming here. I know Coretti was coming here quite a bit. I don't know, maybe about once a week, or else you want to meet out in Marine City. And a few of these other guys always want to meet me down there, down in their neck of the woods. So there's a half a dozen of them that I was meeting with regularly.
And you thought maybe this was initially because you had created friendships with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew something was wrong about Eric Smith, though. I just knew it. I just knew it. Now, I threw him a fundraiser in 2011. That political probe didn't start till 2012 yet. I found out when I got out of prison he didn't register all those funds that I made for him. So, I could have got out with one of those kind of conversations because I know they wanted him bad. He didn't get indicted until I was in prison. So they didn't need me for his indictment. I didn't have any hand in that whatsoever. But if your question is, I think this is your next question. If I knew what I knew today, would I have cooperated? I get a lot of pats on the back from the criminal underworld. I just got a letter from the president of the Outlaws, the International Motorcycle Club, because I didn't flip, and they know all lawyers flip. So I befriended him in prison, and we stay friends to this day. He said I did an honorable thing. I can walk anywhere and keep my head high. I don't have to hide from nobody. But I took a tremendous hit. I never thought they were going to. See, they tried to go after, you see on TV how your property goes to forfeiture or seizure, But the one thing I was always paranoid about, because I dealt in a lot of cash, was tax evasion. So I read the book Tax for Dummies, and I started an out-of-state company in New Orleans, and it had great tax shelters. And I was meticulous about paying my bills. I was just a freak about paying bills. Paid them all in advance, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they put a petition for tax evasion, but the downtown office kicked that out. And so they couldn't get any seizures or forfeitures. So then what they do is they do a total accounting of everything I had. I had a $985,000 in one bank account. I don't like to throw out figures, but because I don't care now because it's gone. Because what they do is they'll drag your case out and everything's on auto pay. You know how it is. You got to pay your monthly mortgages and bills and cars and insurance and all that bullshit in life. And now you got 20-some thousand going out every month and nothing coming in. And overnight I didn't have an income, but I still thought I was set for the rest of my life. With having properties. I had a building, I had a house, I had a condo in Columbia. And, I had everything. So I just didn't think they would take it to these levels. They wanted to make you homeless and broke and penniless. Fortunately, I made a couple right moves, and they didn't get everything. Okay, put it that way. But I'm not living the lifestyle I used to either. I don't, nor do I want to. You know.
Yeah, so
So I guess God puts you
it's
right where you need to be.
you're
But when these
thinking,
guys cross into those levels and how they can see, I mean, it's just so countless. You know how they say he who screams the loudest is usually the person hiding the most, or the person pointing the fingers got three pointing back. I can't tell you about the number of closet alcoholics are on a bench, and yet they come down the hardest on drunk drivers.
"Oh,
You know,
I've heard so many." I've
and
actually heard that um
okay,
through multiple individuals that Richard Coretti's, I don't know if it his ex, what, the mother of his children?
oh, you mean the one when he took the ride home for the drunk driving? She got a drunk driving.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
don't you
that
go
was his
into depth a
girlfriend.
little bit for our
Oh,
listeners?
it's just kind of funny. He well, he was all over the news about it because he's the one who called a press conference. His own dumbass did that because he thinks he's that important. However, apparently he just took a ride home from a wedding. It was his girlfriend or soon-to-be girlfriend, and she was so fucked up. She was so drunk that his kids were in the back seat. His kid called 911, one of the daughters.
Richard
For
Coretti's
that,
daughters.
yes, for that, the Honorable Judge Peretti terminated his parental rights over the child. That was her punishment for calling 911. Okay, so he doesn't have no more contact with his children voluntarily. And it kind of goes to his character. I say, now, I usually had all the drivers, so I always got a ride to and from the airports when we go to Mexico and stuff. And incidentally, I went to Mexico with the 15 years, flying first class and all that shit, which he'll put on his credit card, but I reimburse him in cash. And so he gets a frequent flyer miles. Well, what part of that sounds right? Anything? Okay, so we'll move on. So now we was snowing like a bitch this one time we get back from Mexico, and that same girl Brenda picks us up, and she's fucked up, man. I mean, she's hammered. He's acting like it's not happening, and she's swerving all over the road, man. I almost called 911. I'm not shitting you. I was shaking when I got out of the car, and she was to drive me home. I said, no, I'll get a ride from here, man.
And this is
Yeah,
so
and they sit in judgment of everyone else.
exactly. Exactly.
It's amazing.
How can you bring down the law on other people when you think the laws don't apply to you? And that's really the root of all of the issues that we're
Oh, and not only that,
navigating.
listen, how many more times did I have to get approached for people looking for drug money, and usually a Ponzi scheme? These higher level officials put together some different. I talk about it in the book a little bit on how they had this fake fish farm, and I looked and I went to the meeting with all these upstanding members of the community. There was even a police captain, ex-police captain from one of the Grosse Points. I'm not going to say which. And and there's meeting about investing in this fish farm, And I go outside. And they had the big vats with some fish in the vats and all that stuff. I look out in the ponds. There's hundreds of acres, and they're all empty. There's no water in them. I was like, well, where's all the fucking fish at, man?
Right.
And he's like, they just get right to the point. They talked. There was probably 6 to 8 people at this meeting, and they told me to come up with 100,000. They'll make it into 200 within 6 months. But if I could get $2 to $5 million in some drug money, it's just pass it on to your clients. Get some of that drug money. Now I got approached from gangsters before that if I could pull together some drug money, because I got that reputation earlier on. And in my career, I got to refer a case was $1 million in a duffel bag, in a hockey bag, man. And the judge pinched out 100,000 before it got to me, and the cop took 22,000 out of it. So I talk about that in the book too, and it's a lot of money when you're 30 years old. You've never seen that kind of money, and it's all cash. So that's sort of how I got. And that case came from a judge and a cop. You would think it'd be some drug dealer or some gangster or something like that. No, it was a judge and a cop.
It's
And the
just
judge
so
still wanted a double
sick.
dip. He still wanted another cut. And this other judge wanted a cut, And I said, well, fuck it. Possession is 9/10 of the law, man. And I'm not going to say exactly what I made on that case, but put it this way. I definitely looked up what the President of the United States made that year, and I definitely made more than he did off one
Wow.
case.
The biggest thing for me is just the fact that, so like right now we're dealing with Joann's case, and people always ask, like, what do all these other people that you're interviewing have to do with Joann's case? And it's like you're creating the dynamic for how
I
corruption
think what you're doing is
happens.
wonderful because who else is going to investigate it? There is obviously something wrong with that case. Every single person I have talked to about that case, because I know some players involved in it, okay? Not that well, not great, but I know some of them involved. And there's a lot of shadiness, a lot of deep-rooted corruption there, because that spills over into Wayne and Oakland County. And I'm not familiar with Oakland County system that much, because that's where the real money's at. However, you know, who else is going to do it? They don't have investigative reporters anymore. They're not funded. The news is dead. They only put on headline news. You won't see them putting, how come you don't see anybody reporting on it or investigating or any independent agency investigating it? Now, what I could have, my only other option, what I could have done when I got out of prison or could do right now if I wanted to, is go over to the attorney generals and file a complaint for public integrity. Okay, and I can list a couple judges, specific examples, and they'll start an investigation. But then again, I'm the complaining witness, and I don't want to do that. I'm not going to cooperate with law enforcement, but I'll cooperate with people like you who are doing something good for somebody. Absolutely. That's what the whole thing of this book was. So the average person who's paying the taxes can understand what goes on.
Yeah, I tell everybody.
Because, some of that shit I just wasn't proud of. I think I made it known. I didn't like the feeling after a while. That's why I wanted out. I just wanted out. The last few years,
Yeah.
I wanted out so bad. So when I saw that opportunity to run for judge, it was a no-brainer. It's right where I'm from in Roseville, and I was winning by like 5-1 according to the poll. So there's never any doubt. I figured, hey man, I can give the store away to these hardworking people that just get jammed up by the court system, And that was what the whole thing was about. Well, once I did that, and now they were misinformed that I would be an easy target to flip. So they make you a target. I'm all over the other boards anyway for political corruption and the gangster board and shit. And what did I do? I bought a gram of cocaine in my past life. I pled to what they said. They said I bought 30. They asked me one time. I said, "What kind of evidence do you have? You say I'm involved in drug trafficking on your initial interview?" And they said, "No, but you let it happen around you. We know hundreds of people who've been through this house, different parties you have." And I said, "Well, why am I responsible for what somebody else does?"
Well, look at
There's
Grosse
no
Point
names on
right
my
now.
plea
I
sheet.
mean,
There's not a name or a date on my plea sheet other than to keep it in the statute of limitations.
yeah,
There's no
look
names
at
or dates. They just call them party goers.
yeah, look at Grosse Point right now. For instance, earlier in the podcast, we covered drugs being sold within the city that were laced with fentanyl, and people were dying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
the people that the hands have gone through are not even getting in trouble, and there's direct evidence that they were involved in the selling and distribution of these drugs.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to tell you. This is a little long ago, and I don't know if this guy's still a judge here. Anyway, they're municipal judges there. They only make about $40,000 a year, but they're allowed to sit as visiting judges in other cases, and they get paid off all the fucking time. I'm not saying every one of them, but I know. Okay, well, for instance, this one Grosse Point judge. He called a mutual friend, an attorney, when I was working for this guy. I was getting $50 a case, so it was earlier on in my career. But he found through the grapevine that I could be trusted. So this guy called me and says, "Judge so-and-so wants to use your office on a Friday afternoon to entertain some gal." And I said, what time? He said 6 or 7 o'clock, just for a few hours. I said, "Well, why don't you get a fucking hotel room?" He said, "Well, he's afraid he'll be spotted. It won't be bad going into a lawyer's office, He said, "Just make sure nobody's there and lock it up, and all that, and then leave him a bottle of red wine." I said, "All right, man, I got one client, I got a favor coming in Grosse Point then, which I used shortly after that."
Wow.
Wow,
Wow.
was right.
So how
That's
about
kind of dirtbag shit. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering, what have you heard about Joann's case just with the amount of connections you have with
Well, it seems to be a common consensus that the woman did not commit suicide.
Yeah.
I don't even know anybody who argues that, to tell you the truth.
Tim
I
Matouk,
don't even.
Bill Matouk.
Okay, every time I mention to somebody or it comes up, I don't hear anybody take to the point that, well, maybe she did. It's never the point. The point is, well, I feel sorry for that family. It's never that corruption runs so deep. Comments like that all the time.
Yeah.
There's just so many high ups involved and so many people involved that the domino effect. That's why it should be squashed before it's investigated. That's what I was told. And I got a
And
lot of people on the internet that love to tell me shit, confidential shit, and this is something that that nobody really wants to get involved in. So I
it's
think you have
funny
such a,
because,
but I think you
you
do
know,
wonderful work.
I go out in
People
Grosse
like you.
Pointe and, I'll talk to people and they say, a lot of times I'll say, "Oh, I'm Liv Morgan." And they're like, "Oh, you're the one doing the podcast." They're like, "Oh, I heard this and this, but I don't want to get involved." That's always like the number one
Yeah,
thing, right?
yes.
I don't
I
want to get
imagine you get
involved.
a ton of that,
And
and
it's
I
like,
imagine you get absolutely no cooperation from the police department.
oh,
Is that
none. They've
correct?
never, ever, ever
Yeah.
contacted me in regards to any information that I've asked further in regards to Joann's case. Nothing.
Whenever I hear of that case or something, it's like a bad episode of Chicago PD. You know what I mean? It really is.
Well, the
But not a
police are
happy ending.
obviously involved. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
take a rocket scientist to know that where the
I would
evidence
agree with you there.
points, you know, there's a bigger picture to it, right? So, why
Mm-hmm.
was she killed? What was the reasoning? For years people were like, "Oh, it has to be mob entailed." And it's like she wasn't
Well,
involved in the
let me tell you,
mob.
there's something I think that you just said it earlier on this podcast is follow the money. You know.
Yeah, that's really what it is because at the end of the day, these guys don't own fucking wine stores and make $40 million a year to be able to have the things that they have.
Yes.
A Wayne
Oh
County
God.
prosecutor, you know, officer doesn't make $500,000 a year. How does he have a $500,000 boat and a house on
It's
the lake?
amazing. That's what I'm saying. The same thing that was here in Macomb. Had the undersheriff Ron Lupo. He's been living in a mini mansion, and he's the undersheriff here.
So that's what I'm
I
saying.
mean,
Like, people need to, and this is where, when it comes, like, I truly believe in my heart and with everything we've done, I think justice will come for Joann. I think Joann's story, it's a matter of time. I think
yeah, I
that
think the
people
more
will
you get up there
flip.
and rap about it, yes, the more exposure you get. Yes, I would think somebody will crack somewhere. No one can ever really keep a secret that long.
And I always say
You
that.
know?
I say there's no expiration date on justice, especially when it
No.
comes to Joann's case. And now these people are right. That we're talking. This has been 15 years. People have moved on. They have families. They've gotten married.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want me to expose the fact that the officer that showed
Absolutely.
up on the scene also threw his ex-girlfriend down the stairs and beat the shit out of her in the street when he worked for another department. They don't want me to come forward with that. Or, for instance, Tim Matouk, who's the number one suspect, he was eyewitness at the water's edge, has molested an individual for 10 plus years as a child, a boy. Told his ex-wife. What was that?
I did hear something about that. I didn't confirm that. Okay.
Yeah, told his
All right.
ex-wife, I can make you disappear and nobody will find you. His ex-wife, and then all of a sudden his cousin goes missing after he told her that same exact thing. It's just there's so many instances.
Glaring red flags there.
Yeah, and like from an
I'm not an
attorney
investigator.
standpoint for you, you're like, "Yo, I'm looking at this and I see something's not right."
Listen, I was, I feel for these guys like on an Innocence Project that the case has been overturned, like 34 of them in Michigan just recently in the last 5 years. They sit, I know what it feels like for an innocent guy to sit in prison. I got a taste of it, and it ain't pretty, man. These places are fucking. When I was there, it was built in the 30s. It is so run down in there. When it rains in the cell. Literally rains in the cell. There's cockroaches all over the fucking place. It's sickening, man. And it is just, it's horrific. The conditions.
And it's so quick how
supposed to be
people who are innocent, and that happens a lot. People who are in marginalized communities, right, grew up extremely poor. They don't have the funds and the means to hire, lawyers. And then you've got court-appointed ones that they have overloaded caseloads, and they're doing their best.
When I was doing the court assigned work, and I did it because I liked it. I was into it. But it doesn't. The pay grade has not changed in 50 years.
Yeah.
Actually, some of the courts cut the pay in half.
And I think sometimes the courts forget that it's about finding who's actually guilty, not just getting a guilty sentence. And
they just want the money in these district courts. All they want is the money.
Yep.
They don't give a fuck about sending people to jail one way or the other, man. As far as the blow and shit, Any judges that were, out of respect, I would never pull that shit out in front of a judge. I wouldn't put them in that position. You know what I mean? But it just happened on occasion, or by accident. They just turn a blind eye because they know where the money's coming from. Yet they won't hesitate to take the drug money, including Eric Smith in his office. Now, I will add, its new prosecutor, Pete Lucido, is a good guy, and he is uncorruptible because he's probably got more money than anybody in Macomb County.
And I'm really concerned, though.
That's not the sole reason.
For
That's not the
instance,
sole reason. But
right now, like we had kind of talked about it a little bit. Our billboard was intentionally hit by Joann's nephew. And Pete Lucido's overseeing that. And it's like, how is this case even being held in Macomb County when Richard Coretti is the uncle of Billy Jr.? Like, that's a direct line.
Yeah, man, I saw him go in that wine store accepting gifts and shit. Yeah, I had to pay for my shit, man. You know, I probably unnecessarily paid for his, too. I don't know.
Who went in the wine store and got free stuff?
Coretti.
Oh, yeah.
He introduced me to them guys, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Coretti and Bill and Tim are all in cahoots with each other. Yeah, they threw me a
birthday party down in Grosse Pointe, and I had 5 judges from the Grosse Pointe court, from the Wayne County court, and Attorney General was there, a law partner of mine, but they're pretty good people. But then again, we got stuck with the bill, too, you know.
Well, that's what happens when you're funding these, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, he would hand me a Post-it. This is how I paid the judge. He'd post it after we have a week vacation, okay, or 2 weeks down there. And he'd give me a figure on there. He said, "Oh, that's for the hotel expenses, the condo expenses, and for some other stuff because a lot of stuff was at the resort, you know." And that didn't count the women. And you know, here's a guy who boasts in public, "I'm certainly glad I never had to pay for any ass." Well, that's technically true because somebody else always paid for his fat ass. You know?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man, I bet you don't wear it no more. That Rolex watch, man, he was flashing it at dinner, man. He wanted everybody to see it, you know?
Oh, my God. Lots of drugs, lots of prostitution, lots of corruption.
The guy who gave him the Rolex watch, the first thing he did, he gets on to Mexico, because I went with him down by the marina. He went to the Rolex store. And I'm like, why did you go to a Rolex store in Mexico when you already got, it's in the safe. There's already 2 Rolex watches in the safe, and you're wearing one. Well, it's not the one Rick wanted. So he bought him a brand new Rolex down in Mexico.
Oh, my God.
He's flashing in front of everybody. He said, "Rick, is that a Rolex?" He says, "Oh, yes, it's my first. I thought I would spoil myself." I don't think you know you did, because I was down at the marina when the guy bought it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I've already known that guy will do anything for money. When we were talking about, you know, his girlfriend, you know, driving drunk and his kids were in the car, he didn't just give his kids up. He was paid off to give his kids up.
Absolutely, that Van Conway paid him off. Absolutely.
$175,000 around about.
I'm glad you said it.
Yep, was paid.
Let me tell you something. In the 25 years I've known him, I never saw him buy a cup of coffee or a piece of pizza in 25 years. Now, what's my role in this? Well, you know, I kind of seize an opportunity as well. He's the chief judge on the circuit court. When I got problems there, you know, cases switched around. I can come and go anytime I want. You know, nobody really gave me any hassles about that. I would go on days when my cases weren't even scheduled, just to show off to the client, because they get highly impressed. You're on a first-name basis with the judge. You know, you don't have to put up with the probation department or the prosecutor or nobody. I just go right in front of the judge, you know. It's just all public record, man. You know, hey, Joann, I don't want to brag, but I'm not a lawyer anymore, man.
Yeah.
Hey, so what you're doing, you know, it's for a cause. So I have no problem talking to you. I'm pretty tight-lipped when it comes to all this other shit. But I wrote a book, and I stand by everything. It's been fact-checked in New York City. It's been fact-checked here. Had some lawyers fact-check everything. And I wanted to make it 100% true.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Your book is your testimony, right? That's your voice.
Yes, it's absolutely. It touches. And at the time, I was being threatened by further indictments from the feds. So I had to be careful about figures I said and shit like that, because I didn't want to get no ongoing legal tax evasion shit like that. You know what I mean? when you deal with a lot of cash. You know, what are they going to do now? Squeeze water from a rock? Fuck it.
Yeah. And I really
But
appreciate you, you know, being as transparent as you are. Because, like I said, there's a lot of people that don't want to fucking talk. And there's a lot of people that are, you know, they'll say to me, like, you're a young 30-year-old girl. Like, what the fuck are you doing with all this corruption? Like, you're going to get yourself killed. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, listen, if they kill me, they're stupid. They're dumb.
well, let me tell you something. There's something to be said for that, but then again, a lot of them have what's just called illusory power. One of the biggest things when I put the book up, oh my God, aren't you afraid of political reprisals? You know, I said, why? I'm not running for any office. What's wrong with just telling the fucking truth for a change? Just, you know, it was like a cleansing experience because I didn't say nothing for 30 years.
Wow.
And I sat there and watched a lot of egregious shit go down, really egregious shit. And then at the end of it, when I was being targeted by some of these judges, it was to the point where I can't even make no money in these courts no more because they just want more and more and more. I can give you so many specific examples, like a judge just showing the fuck up at a dinner, a beer and burger and beer joint that we're going to have lunch with, a few people, mixed crowd, and I'm sponsoring the lunch, which I did a lot of that kind of shit. And he shows up and he's getting surf and turf for his 3 kids and his wife. You know, for carryouts.
Jesus.
You know, and this was going on all the time. I mean, it got to the point, but I didn't know Coretti's involvement with this other judge. They were tag teaming me, and they acted like they're not friends. Because I bitched about it to him. I said, this guy is squeezing me, man. I don't know what to fucking do. Who do I complain to? I said, you're the chief judge on the circuit court. Talk to this idiot, you know? He goes, well, I got to clearly set your boundaries. About 2 months later, he goes, listen, I want to reward you for all your years of generosity, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go to Biloxi. It's all comp. Everything's comp. I get to the fucking airport, and guess who else is getting on a plane? His buddy Zyburski. He wants me to pay for his fucking gambling down there. He even asked me, ordered me to take him to New Orleans because he knew I had a lot of connection in New Orleans. Man, that's my fucking place in New Orleans. That's my quiet time. You know, there's no way I was going to take this idiot there. Yeah. He told me he said he wanted a suite at the Royal Semester. That's like $500 a night. And then his gambling. You know, he says he's a fucking degenerate gambler. He's a complete degenerate gambler. What do gamblers do?
Yeah,
with your money.
Fucking crazy. It's literally crazy. And I think
don't pay their debts. Yes.
I think this will probably be one of the most shocking episodes for people because they're going to hear, you know, judges are taking money from attorneys. They are taking bribes. They're selling their children for money. They're, you know, committing crimes. They're driving drunk. They're hiring prostitutes, doing cocaine.
Hypocrisy. Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're okay. Hypocrisy. That's really what it is.
It's the ultimate hypocrisy, and I was becoming a part of it slow. It doesn't happen overnight. Now, again, we have to get back to that question. Knowing what I know today, what I've flipped, I would have flipped in a New York minute.